Welcome to Beekeeping Today podcast presented by Bee Culture. Beekeeping Today podcast is your source for beekeeping news, information, and entertainment. I'm Jeff Ott.
And I'm Kim Flatham.
Hey, Jeff and Kim. Today's sponsor is Global Patties. They're a family-operated business that manufactures protein supplement patties for honeybees. It's a good time to think about honeybee nutrition. Feeding your hives protein supplement patties will ensure that they produce strong and healthy colonies by increasing brood production and overall honey flow. Now is a great time to consider what type of patty is right for your area and your honeybees. Global offers a variety of standard patties as well as custom patties to meet your needs. No matter where you are, Global is ready to serve you out of their manufacturing plants in Airdrie, Alberta, and in Butte, Montana, or from distribution depots across the continent. Visit them today at www.globalpatties.com.
Thank you, Global Patties, and thank you, Sherry. You know, each week we get to talk about how much we appreciate our sponsors' support, and we know you'd rather we get right to talking about beekeeping. However, our great sponsors are critical to help making all of this happen. From the transcripts to hosting fees to hardware to software, the microphones, the recorders, the subscriptions, everything that takes to make an episode, they enable. So with that, thanks to Bee Culture Magazine for continuing their presenting sponsorship of this podcast. Bee Culture has been the magazine for American beekeeping since 1873. Subscribe to Bee Culture today. We also want to thank 2 Million Blossoms to sponsor this episode. 2 Million Blossoms is dedicated to protecting all pollinators. Listen, 2 Million Blossoms, the podcast at 2millionblossoms.com, and that is with a number 2. Available from the website or wherever you download your podcast. Hey, everybody, thanks for joining us. We are truly happy you're here. Hey, Kim, it's almost March. It's coming. It's there. It's on the horizon.
Yeah, dream on. I'm looking at today it was 50 and tomorrow it will be 24. So dream on. It ain't ever going to get here. But I tell you, you know what I wish? I wish I was sitting where John Miller's sitting today.
Yes. Well, maybe not in the exact same place, but, in the same locale, right?
Same locale, yep, in the middle of an almond orchard someplace. I've been there during almond bloom, and there may be better places on earth, but I've never seen them.
I've not been to an almond orchard during the bloom, and I look forward to that at some point. Here.
You need to bike that 400-mile bee yard sometime, Jeff.
That would be fun, although I'd probably get run over by a truck. Someone rushing bees to get to another orchard somewhere further up the hillside or something. Well, that does lead us to today's show. We have a friend of the podcast, John Miller. He's been around the industry for many years. He's a regular contributor to Bee Culture Magazine, a monthly column. You've known John for longer than I have, but I've known him for 20, 23, 24 years.
Yeah, longer than that. Not a lot longer than that, but we got together pretty much when I first started with the magazine, and that was 30 plus years ago. So yeah. We've been together a lot. I've been to his place a number of times, and a number of his places. He's got more than one, so...
Well, that's a sign of a successful beekeeper. Well, we've had John on the show at least 2 other times, and talking about often the politics of beekeeping. And the last time he was on, we talked about indoor wintering, which is a very fascinating and new topic for beekeepers, commercial beekeepers. And today we are invited him back to talk about almond pollination and almond season, which we are directly in the middle of.
Right, yep, and hopefully he'll be able to tell us a little bit about his overwintering in that building and how it went and what happened after that. How did he get them out of there, get them on trucks, get them to the orchards, all those things. So I'm interested in hearing this. This is the next generation of keeping bees and pollinating almonds is that overwintering building.
Yeah, it really is. Well, let's get John on the show right now. First, a quick word from our friends at Strong Microbials.
Hello, beekeepers. Your honeybees face a lot of challenges out there. unbalanced food sources from monoculture crops, holding yards, drought, food shortages, antibiotics, pesticides, and pathogens like chalk brood. To overcome these challenges, your bees need the multiple bacteria that are in all nectars, pollens, and the environment. These bacteria aid honeybees' digestion and improve your honeybees' response and resilience to pesticides. Now you can help improve your honey colony health with a quick, easy, and safe-to-use product. Strong Microbial's Super DFM Honeybee uses naturally occurring bacteria to restore the healthy gut biome of your honeybees. Check them out today at www.strongmicrobials.com.
Hey everybody, welcome back. And while you're at the Strong Microbial site, make sure you click on and subscribe to The Hive, the regular newsletter full of interesting beekeeping facts and product information. Hey everybody, welcome back again. Sitting across the not even across the virtual Zoom table, sitting in a pickup truck cab somewhere in California right now is our good friend of the podcast, John Miller. John Miller, welcome back to Beekeeping Today podcast.
Thanks, Jeff. Hi, Kim. It's good to see you guys. It's good to be back.
Oh, glad you could make it today, John. And sitting in the cab of a pickup in the middle of California almonds is kind of romantic in a way. It's a real life adventure right now. So, but what I wanted to start with, John, was we left off last time with your bees wintering indoors, and your thought was you were going to have, before they came out, you were going to have California inspectors come out and take a look at them so that you could avoid that step once you got to California this spring. How did overwintering go, and did the inspection procedure work?
Good questions, because overwintering is now probably a million hives are wintering indoors now. And those buildings, there's several different designs, but the outcome is the strength and the well-being and the health of those colonies coming out of the buildings. And it's pretty darn good.
Oh, cool.
Pretty darn good. Western Idaho buildings were pretty darn good, and the buildings down by Filer were pretty good, Filer, Idaho. Our building is in North Dakota, which is a little bit different. But 3 or 4 years ago, we could see that the amount of traffic coming through Truckee, 87% of all the bees come through Truckee, California. That bug station is just overwhelmed. Like, there's 2 overwhelmed inspectors in there, and they were donning their bee gear and their flashlights before dawn and after dusk, and looking for bugs they couldn't make a determination on. It was a mess. So between Rich Waycott, the CEO of the Almond board, and Dan Cummins, the chair of Blue Diamond, and Secretary Karen Ross, and the chair of the Apiary Inspectors of America, and North Dakota Commissioner Doug Goring, all those guys supported an effort to streamline the process at Truckee, to get those trucks through without getting into a delay, because as indoor wintering was emerging, as the science is not in question. I said to Karen Ross one day, I said, there's 2,000 semis of bees coming through here between the 10th of January and the 5th of February. There's no way that can be handled. So at the time, I was listening to a guy talking about how the cherry growers of California had been shipping their cherries to the Tokyo Fresh Market, and they'd be rejected. And once your load of cherries is rejected in Tokyo, you're done. There's no way to fly those cherries back to any other market.
Yeah.
So the cherry guys imported the Japanese ag inspectors to Stockton at the packing house before the bees ever left, before the cherries ever left. Got the stamp of approval from the Japanese ag inspector, and the cherries flew through without any problem. So we adopted that idea to bring California Department of Agriculture pest exclusion people, inspectors, out to the indoor building in California. And if you've ever inspected bees, you can spend an hour inspecting 40 hives, or you can spend an hour inspecting 15,000 hives. And we saw an opportunity to go inside these indoor storage buildings, do good scientific sample and assay. And then if the results were clean, no hive beetles, no fire ants, no noxious weeds, issue a certificate of pre-inspection. So that worked pretty well. A memorandum of understanding was adopted between Idaho, Montana, North Dakota, and California, perhaps Washington now too. And so that's the story, and it worked. And the unintended consequence, Kim, it's what you never think. You don't see that coming. The guys who really like the program are the truckers who are not hung up there for 2 hours waiting to get in, and the inspectors who don't have to put on their hat and veil and go out looking for bugs. Like, here's a piece of paper, says it was pre-inspected. Stamp it, got the blessing of clergy, and down the road we go. That part works great.
I'm impressed that it worked that well that fast.
The first time it was a pilot project, and now this year we re-engaged with CDFA, California Department of Food and Agriculture, and we have yet another piece of paper that identifies the load and identifies this and that in the building and the facility. And now we just walk in, the guy stamps it, stamps the bill of lading, and out the door he goes. I mean, literally 1 minute in, 1 minute out. This, again, is a pilot project, and there was only one outfit in the nation that tried it this year, but by all accounts, everybody likes it.
How long before you ship the bees are the inspectors in that building?
Good question. Usually, the inspections try to get them after the 15th of December and prior to the 15th of January, because we start shipping the 6th of January. They want some relevance, some time relevance, so they come close but not too close, far but not too far ahead of the schedule.
Mm-hmm. And is there any kind of certification or guarantee that there's the same bees they inspected or the same bees you deliver? How do they? Is that a handshake, or is that any kind of certification?
Yeah. Well, I have never thought of that before. I guess they could stamp it, or they could time stamp their activity in there. I guess there would be a way of nailing a tag on the hives, but thus far, it's a memorandum of understanding between the state of California and the state of North Dakota Department of Agriculture.
That's good.
So far, nobody's gaming it, because if you game a system and your whole building goes upside down, that's the penalty you don't want.
Yeah, you don't want to be that guy.
No, you don't want to be that guy. And I think the indoor operators understand that you don't want to be that guy. Don't game the system.
Yeah.
So when they come out to inspect, John, I'm guessing that all of the bees in your building are all yours, but some of these buildings have more than one beekeeper in them. And the inspectors, they're coming in with a forklift and they're taking off the top pallet and then this pallet below it, and they're going to another pile and doing the same thing. How's this work?
Usually they don't go into the upper stories because the building is gridded in columns and rows. And you could hunt and peck a few stacks off the top on the outside, but the building is put together like a Lego set. You can't sample it in that sense of the word. So what they do is usually go along ground level pallet and the second pallet up, and with their flashlights, they will be looking for field debris, an elderly couple of hive beetles, fire ant, and guess what? They're never going to see one in our building because we know what's going into that building before they go into that building, and they're not going to see something that would take the building upside down. I mean, there is a risk here of an operator introducing a hive beetle or a fire ant into his building. The climate or the environment for a hive beetle and a fire ant inside a dark, cold, concrete building is perhaps the least, it's a hostile environment for those critters. But the last thing that happens to our pallets before they enter the building is they get a thorough cleaning, either a pressure wash or an air jet or a garden hoe underneath, like black widows, any grasshoppers, any plops from the field. All that stuff gets raked off. No weeds, no kochia, no star thistle, no nothing. Those pallets are, and it's important to remember that if you got a building stacked 8 pallets high, your bottom 4 pallets should be in really good physical condition, because you don't want a domino ever.
It's a bad day.
That would be a bad day. That would be a very bad day.
So the inspectors have now gone through your building, and they've given you a clean bill of health, and you came up to, what did you say, the 6th of February and or January, and life starts getting crazy by starting to get them to California. How did that work this year? Getting them out, getting them into and working with. Where did they go? Do you have holding yards, or did you go right to the orchards?
We go straight to the orchards. Pesticides have changed now, and they're not using methylparathion. They're not using a lot of diazinon. They're not using some of those long-term pesticides anymore. Hygiene practiced in the orchard as a prevention, not as a remedial. That is, keep your orchard clean, you won't have nearly as many bugs. They practice 2 old stick tights per tree. That's where the navel orange worm lives and raises their family, and they disperse into the orchard. Well, if you've got 2 mummies per tree, that's the gold standard. Your orchard is hygienic. I'm not likely to get sprayed in those orchards. Orchard growers are learning that the number 2 per 100 in beekeepers is also a really good standard. And the number 2 practiced by almond growers and the number 2 practiced by beekeepers, we're finding each other. It's a safer place for me to be. So yes, we go straight into the almond orchards. We have good relationships with a series of trucking companies, and they show up on time and they deliver on time. And we just disperse them straight into the orchard.
So you're there before bloom, ready to go, and as soon as it starts to bloom, how's the bloom looking this year?
It's really moving quick. Today, Saturday the 11th, whatever today is.
Friday.
Thank you. Usually we see popcorn on Valentine's Day, and it's here today now. Some orchards, Chico District is ahead of Woodland District, which is ahead of Modesto District, which is ahead of Madera District. So it's coming pretty fast this year because it's been 75 degrees all week. It's just gorgeous down here. I mean, this is the kind of days that 50,000 people come to California and say, this is where I'm going to live.
Well, does that mean then that the bloom's going to go faster?
Yeah.
And how does that affect yield?
A lot of times, what they call it syncing. And if the varieties are synced, then your Nonpareil and your Padre and your Carmel, they bloom together. Sometimes that can be a flash bloom. The varieties seem to be synced this year, right now. And Blue Diamond has an in the field, or maybe it's Almond Board of California, has an in the field tab on their website. You can track the bloom, get the progression. That's usually a Mel Machado product.
Well, that makes perfect sense. In another way, that's something that you mentioned a while ago is sort of a clearinghouse for growers finding bees and bees finding growers, a central location rather than everybody texting and searching. Yeah. And is that on the horizon?
It should be. My little tribe is different from your little tribe, and we don't text with that little tribe over there. But it would be really useful to have a platform, something like Bees to Trees, something really tricky, spiffy. And it would be good if there was like a poster board there, just like there's 10,000 loads posted in California every single day. Truckers are free to choose which ones they take. If there was a way to level that out, that'd be great. That'd be great. It'd be much more transparent. Well-functioning markets are transparent. When you've got a market where 10% really want it unclear and clear over here, on the other 10% is another 10% of the people that want it not clear for their own purposes, that's where you can get into not optimizing the resource.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah. So a bees to tree would be a cool thing, but I don't know who's going to do it. It's not me.
Better Bee is pleased to sponsor today's episode of Beekeeping Today podcast. For over 40 years, Better Bee has supplied beekeepers across the country with the tools, equipment, and knowledge needed to succeed. Because many Better Bee employees are beekeepers themselves, they understand your needs and challenges and are better prepared to answer your beekeeping questions. From their colorful catalog to their support of beekeeper educational activities, including this podcast, Better Bee truly lives up to their tagline of beekeepers serving beekeepers. See for yourself at betterbee.com.
Well, we just announced to the world there's a need out there. There's a need out there, and there's a demand, and we need a supply to fix it.
There really is. I've never been the implementation guy. I'm just the guy who stands in the middle of the almond orchard and thinks, geez, if there was a way to link the grower and the beekeeper other than the coffee shop or my friend said, or I heard this on TV.
Right.
Yeah, that'd be more transparent.
How is sort of generalizing here in terms of looking at the orchards, old trees being taken out, new trees coming in, and all that comes down to how much water is there?
How much water is there, and what are landowners prioritizing the water for? For example, in the woodland district, competition for tomatoes, because woodland is such fabulous tomato country. But perhaps other crops that use water, wheat, corn, sunflowers in California, that acreage may go fallow long before a tree or a vine crop goes fallow. It's like your tree is a 30-year investment and your wheat is a 6-week investment.
Yeah, right. Well, what are you looking at in terms of, you got to ask, and we've talked to a number of people about this, the self-fertile trees, or those that are supposed, and you take it another step. I've got an orchard, or I've got a plot with these self-fertile trees, and in theory they don't need bees, but if you put bees in, they do pretty well. But if my neighbor's got bees on all four sides of me,
why rent any bees?
That's the question.
That's a new parasite in the industry. It's called Almond parasiticus, where your next door neighbor parasitizes your bees. Yeah, I don't know about that, because there was a lot of spray about a guy who knocked down there was a lot of conjecture over an operator that had a 4,000-pound crop and rented no bees. Well, he happened to be in the Houston area where I do a lot of work for Braden Farms. He should check his neighborly relationship monitor.
Have you heard much about hive theft this year? Is it?
Yeah, there's a little bit. Towsers got nicked again, but they caught the guys and the forklift that was stolen last year.
Oh, outstanding.
That's great.
Yeah, really. So, and I heard Zach got nicked for 180, but I don't know if he got him back. More and more, we're getting behind lock gates. Just a guy can cut a furrow on the side of the road that's 18 inches sharp deep, and that'll keep out thieves. It's still probably true that more hives are stolen within a 100-mile radius of Sacramento, California than anywhere on Earth.
Because?
People that like to steal bees tend to live in Sacramento County.
Okay.
That's about as far as I want to go.
All right.
This is off record, Jeff. Just check the demographics.
Yeah, I was going to say the opinions expressed here are those of the speaker and not of the podcast. I'm just saying that.
I just, I don't want to be an imbecile, and I'm just saying hive theft seems to be going down because almond growers recognize the investment they've made in those bees, and they're taking some security issues that are as simple as a pipe gate locked at dark.
Are you seeing any, and right now, this time of year and or getting ready for later this season, growers putting essentially forage between rows of trees for the bees?
Yeah, Kim, that's such a good question, because Seeds for Bees is Project APISM has
right.
put a lot of emphasis on Seeds for Bees. And Seeds for Bees can probably be most effective north of, say, Modesto, where more rainfall occurs naturally. One of our farms is called Bullseye Farm in Woodland, California, and they were early adopters and early contributors to Seeds for Bees. And but they put their forage into the walnuts, which was interesting because they're growing walnuts right next to almonds. But once the bees have stripped the almond trees by about 2 p.m, then they poured over to the walnuts, the forage on walnuts, and finished their day safely on Bullseye property. They're not wandering 2 miles off, getting into trouble in some other crop or some other place. It's anchoring. You call it anchoring your bees.
That's good. Good idea.
Yes.
Over the last year or so, we've talked to people who are working with growers and working with beekeepers in terms of inspection. There was the company that, Jeff, what was the company that had infrared, and they go into an almond orchard at night and they were shining an infrared camera at the pallets and measuring the frames of bees?
Is it Bee Wise? I know there's Beware and Bee Hero.
Bee Wise, that's it, yes.
BS.
Are you seeing any of those people out there? Is it growing?
I see Bee Hero, and we saw a lot of Nectar. Nectar is a Canadian outfit.
Yep.
We worked with them extensively last year, and I think they're working on an update to their software or the performance of their product or service.
That's a monitoring product, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about the thermal imaging. Ideally, you'd rip 1,000 covers off this 1 mile long orchard, but get the bees out from under the canopy of the trees and then just do a flyover with a drone and just take your photographic image down through the top bars rather than looking through the hive body into the end bars.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. I'm not convinced, even though I was, really keen about this about 3 years ago. I'm not convinced that's the optimal way to measure hive strength. It's so subjective. It depends on whether I owe the inspector $500 from last year on my grading process this year. Grading is slippery stuff because it's in real time in a very narrow window. That if you got good bees, it's not a problem. If you got lousy bees, there's no amount of fairy dust you can sprinkle on that hive on the 10th of February to make it better.
Yeah.
You can shove emerging brood. You can do some things, but you need to be ready in September for February.
That seems to be the case everywhere. When will you pull your bees out of there? When will you be done? About
March this year, probably March 8th. Yeah, a few days early, usually March 10th, 12th, probably March 8th.
3 to 4 weeks from today, then.
Yeah.
About.
And they'll be busting.
Okay.
They're going to be so ready to be shaken. Yes.
So where do you take them once you pull them out of the orchards?
A bunch go to Washington State for the apples. We usually shake those once and then send them up. They're so much easier to manage. Some bees will just park in the Golden Triangle, and different queen and package guys will come and shake them once, maybe twice. And then we'll take a bunch up into the foothills to make the spring nukes.
One of the evolutionary changes that people are seeing in the bee industry in this country, and it continues on a day-to-day basis to not be the same as it was yesterday, but one of them is what you were just saying about shaking bees for package and nuke people. So you're getting income from the extra bees that you raised on the almonds. They're taking them away. You're taking those bees and putting them on another crop, so you're pollinating at least 2, maybe 3 crops, plus you're shaking bees. Then you're going to go make honey or you're going to go make more bees?
Yeah. North Dakota is still a really big honey-producing state, but it's because we've got more honeybees than people in that state by a lot. And the quality of the forage in North Dakota, the long-term trend there is more corn and more beans and fewer cows and fewer dairies. And so the profile of the forage abundance has changed up there a lot. And there's been some nice research done out of Jamestown in North Dakota. Clint Otto, Chip Eulis, both did very, very nice research showing that the landscape's changed. It's not nearly as productive as it used to be.
I'm not surprised. What do you think? I don't know. I'm kind of left field here. The honey market's going to be changing probably with the tariffs that are coming in, and those tariffs are aimed at the biggest countries that are importing honey or exporting honey to us. So, what gut feeling? How is that going to affect what you're doing, and or what are the other beekeepers that are honey producers going to? What's that going to do to them? And I'll paraphrase that because I'll go back to earlier. We were talking about the evolution of the industry. It's gone from pollination and honey to pollination and bees and some honey maybe.
That's true.
And is this tariff thing going to turn that around?
No. Anytime you introduce an artificial market barrier or create a disruption in it, it's like pushing on a balloon. And you push on the balloon and this place gets compressed, but this area pops out bigger. And as long as people have been gaming international trade, nothing's going to change. It'll just pop up somewhere else.
Yeah, probably.
I regret that I regret that's the way it is, because this is hard for some people, honey producers that rely on honey production for their livelihood. This is hard on them. But the bloodless truth is there's more money being made in pollination than there is in honey production, with the exception of the local sideline or hobbyist producer who's able to sell his honey for what it's worth.
Yeah.
Big industrial operations, I don't know.
One of the evolutionary things that this industry is seeing then is that with wintering, you said there is something like 1 million hives being wintered indoors, and that's probably not going to go down anytime soon.
Oh, no. There's new buildings coming out.
What that's going to do in the long run, not even the medium run, is reduce winter losses.
Uh-huh.
So that come next spring, you won't have a lot of beekeepers looking for a lot of bees because they'll actually have overwintered. So that's going to change the face of things in terms of pollination, bees, and honey. And if the honey market is disrupted and the wintering indoors is going to disrupt colony losses, I'm glad I'm not in the bee business trying to figure this out.
I'm saying to the guys, got the extracting building in Gackle. It's 18,000 foot building, state of the art, finest machinery available. Got that thing and turn it into a second indoor wintering and build bees in North Dakota and forget this honey production and the supers and the fixed cost and the labor costs and all the things that go into honey production. Do the efficient thing. And here's why. Let me caveat. Almond acreage, 40% of the almond acreage in the ground in California today is less than 7 years old. There is a big wave of demand coming in the next 3 years for quality bees. And if I'm an almond guy and I'm paying $225 for a beehive, I want to know what's inside those boxes. I'm going to find the good operators that are grading high, consistently grade high. The top 10 beekeepers are finding the top 10 almond growers and so forth. I just think there's big opportunity out here for the good operations. And you can have a really good 500 hive operation and send one semi-load of really good bees to California, and they'll find a market. They'll find a customer.
Do you think that the pending or impending climate change and the shift of the almond orchards maybe to Idaho or to other locations with more water and climate suitability, how will that affect the bee market, or is that not a concern at this point?
Good question, Jeff. There may be some acreage in southwest Idaho. An almond tree is deciduous. It needs 600 chilling hours every winter. So it's okay with winter southwest Idaho type of winter.
Mm-hmm.
I gave a talk about 15 years ago in SAC to the almond industry, and I said to them I'd be really careful making their trees more adaptive to other climates, because I said if you make it possible to grow almond trees in lots of places, almond trees will be grown in lots of places. Pin drop. So, but they're drilling on these self-fertile varieties, and they also will find their place with a limited percentage of the acreage. But these independence varieties, they have their own midlife crises where their productivity kind of tails off, and the flavor notes are a little off from the nonpareil. Still the number one, far and away, of replanted acreage is nonpareil Supreme.
Still, huh? Yeah, that makes sense. Yep.
Mel Machado said, I think it's still 65% of all the replant acreage. Then we got the Padres and the Carmels and a few Monterey's. There's nonpareil and everything else.
Yep. Well, what have we missed on all of this 6-week explosion of activity?
It's just how vital good help is. Like our H2A guys were delayed for a month. So it was 40 semis in 20 days by 6 people, distributed.
Wow.
Fed, pollen patty in the middle.
Well, actually, you bring up another subject, and labor is not going down by any stretch of the imagination in terms of cost, and all of the things that it takes to run your business. I mean, they're talking what the percentage of inflation they're talking isn't astronomical, but it's notable.
Yeah.
Where do you see that as short term and maybe even long term? But it's certainly short term going to be this season.
The Department of Labor sets the wages for the H2A employees. It is a wage rate that has long been contested by the employers as not being an accurate reflection of wages. And litigation goes on and on. But we are unable to attract domestic labor with multi-state advertising. And so we pick up, our guys mostly come from Monterey and Mexico, and they mostly come from beekeeping families. Now the dad's getting older and he's staying home, but a son is coming, or a nephew is coming that's already, pre-trained by their uncle or their dad for how to keep bees. This has just been a lifesaver for us.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. What have we missed, John?
I don't know. You treat those employees well and tell them, work hard on the 1st of July. When if we're all caught up on the 1st of July, we'll fly you home for a couple of weeks. You'll be with your family. Come back from August till middle of November. Get everything buttoned up, put together tight, and we'll see you in January. Some of those intangibles are valued by those guys. I have much respect for Jason and Ryan, who now run Miller Honey Farms, because they're more vested in, they invest more in employees and their well-being than I did. And I think that's really important in these days.
Probably going to be more so. Have we missed anything, John?
No, it's just, everybody ought to come out and just drive this. A guy I know called it a 400-mile long bee yard. Remember him?
Yes.
Everybody ought to drive the 400-mile long bee yard just once.
I couldn't agree more. It was the best 2 weeks of my life, I think, in terms of bees.
I just love this job. I've got the best job in the world, and I'm not telling anybody.
Well, John, I think what we should do is plan a spring, and we take our bicycles and ride the length of the Almond.
That'd be cool.
I'll watch, Jeff.
We'll send you greetings from the road, Kim.
I can do that.
Have you tried getting a Trek 520 lately, like a touring bike?
You can't even get a bike chain right now. So
can't get a bike. I know. Yeah, I think that's a keen idea.
We'll put that on. We'll put that in a reminder for next year or next couple of years. We'll do it.
That'd be good. If I step away from the bees, I'd really love to, take old Highway 33 or old Highway 99 or the Santa Fe, and you could ride that and not get killed.
Well, that would be a goal.
That'd be a plus. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, John, it's been wonderful having you back on the show as always, and you're always welcome back. Enjoy reading your column and in Bee Culture every month. Wish you the best this almond season.
Thank you, man.
And now that we know we can get you to pick up, we'll probably be on your doorstep more often.
Guys, you're always welcome. You're always welcome. Come on down.
It's been good, John. Thanks. Good luck on the rest of the season.
Thank you. We'll see you guys soon.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Hi, Jeff.
It's always a pleasure talking to John, and catch him in the cab of his truck. I don't know. Where was he pulled over? It looked like at a cafe or something.
Something, I'm not sure, but the fact that it worked pretty well, it puts a nice spin on it, because we've got him in the middle of an almond orchard someplace, and he's talking almonds and bees, and we get to listen in on. It's like sitting in a restaurant listening to the beekeepers and the growers talk during, which I was able to do a few years ago. So, yeah, it sounds like it's going good. And this overwintering thing, there is the future. There's no doubt.
That really is appealing. And I wonder if there's any difference. And I was going to ask him, but we'll save it for next time. I know some people are trying to rent out their vegetable warehouses to beekeepers. I wonder if there's any difference in the effectiveness between a converted vegetable warehouse for bees versus a warehouse that's been designed specifically for warehousing bees.
Well, I've heard a couple of instances where that was done, and you got to convert the vegetable thing to do bees. You got to have the right CO2, and you have the right temperature, and you got to have the lights right. So, building a building for bees or converting a building for bees, what you end up with is a building for bees, or you got a bunch of dead bees. Yeah.
Well, I'd be curious. I mean, if someone tried to just move the bees into an empty space because it's quote unquote a warehouse. But anyways, a thought for a future show.
Yep. I was interested in the inspection process. I was hoping that some of those people that we talked to earlier would have made a bigger dent in this, but with as many people overwintering in buildings and having them inspected before they even get to California, I can see that the handwriting on the wall is that's probably going to be the future.
And I do want to correct something for our listeners, is that we were wondering about the thermal imaging, and that was the Bee Corp with Ellie Sims and company doing thermal imaging of the bees.
Right.
And I think we mentioned Beewise or something else. And anyways, that was the Bee Corp with thermal imaging. So apologies for that.
I hope it works for them on smaller operations that don't get to winter indoors, that come from like the Midwest or the South.
We'll have to have them back, see how their season went. That about wraps it up for this episode. Before we go, I want to encourage our listeners to rate us 5 stars in Apple Podcasts, wherever you download and stream the show. Your vote helps other beekeepers find us quicker. Even better, write a review and let other beekeepers looking for a new podcast know what you like. You can get there directly from our website by clicking on reviews along the top of any web page. As always, we thank Bee Culture, the magazine for American beekeeping, for their continued support of Beekeeping Today podcast. We want to thank our regular episode sponsor, Global Patties. Check them out at www.globalpatties.com. We want to thank Strong Microbials for their support of the podcast. Check out their probiotic line at www.strongmicrobials.com. And thanks to Better Bee for joining us as a supporter. Check out all of their supplies at www.betterbee.com. And we want to thank Northern Bee Books for sponsoring Kim's Bee Books, Old and New. And you hear that on a regular basis here in the podcast. And finally, and most importantly, we want to thank you, the Beekeeping Today podcast listener, for joining us on this show. Feel free to send us questions and comments at questions@beekeepingtodaypodcast.com. We'd love to hear from you. Anything else, Kim?
I think that about wraps it up, Jeff. I'm exhausted from all the running we did with John.
Yes, it was a good show. Thanks a lot, everybody.